whether he was murdered or whether he died of old age is still open to conjecture. But his body, or the remains of it, are still up here. And very few people still have been allowed in here. And even though it's now part of government territory, it's still very much Khmer Rouge. The echoes of war are everywhere. Derelict and rusting tanks are reminders of the Khmer Rouge's last stand. And then another checkpoint. It's the entrance to Pol Pot's headquarters. More soldiers to negotiate with. And again, there are signs of fighting. These statues are revolutionaries, and they've all had their heads blown off. Hello? Hi. We good? We approach the soldiers cautiously. Even though they wear the insignia of the modern Cambodian army, these men were Khmer Rouge guards in Pol Pot's day.
Yeah, he says he's a Khmer, ex-Khmer soldier.
Did he like Pol Pot? Did he think he was a hero?
Pol Pot hot. He said anybody he's like.
Everybody liked him?
Yeah.
Why did so many people like him?
He said it's forcing.
They forced?
Yeah.
They forced him to like him?
Yeah.
So most people didn't want to like him?
Yeah.
Ah. It's all a little unclear what he believed or believes. The days of the Khmer Rouge are not long gone. Just in case there's trouble ahead, Sun Hien arranges for one of the soldiers to come with us to ease our passage. The road gets worse. So after the deaths of 1.5 million people, how could someone still like Pol Pot? You think a lot of people actually liked Pol Pot because he was such a fierce
that's what I heard
dictator?
From, yeah, that's what I heard from other people individually, you know. They still, you know, respect Pol Pot.
Despite him killing all those people, and they're even some of their own relatives, they still respect him. That's incredible. There's a sense of dread as we arrive at Pravy Hir, Pol Pot's last headquarters. This was where he died. Hello. The greeting, though, is friendly. This is a real government soldier, not a former Khmer Rouge. Border sensitivities have changed, and today it's the government in charge. I understand that Pol Pot's last days were spent here and that he died here and his body was burnt. Is that correct?
He said yes. He's died here and his body was burned in that place.
Could he show us?
Yeah.
There's not much left of it, is there? At first, it all looks a bit mundane. A scattering of Pol Pot's possessions, even the remains of his toilet. And then we're shown his grave.
That is the place that they burned Pol Pot's body after he died.
So nothing's been removed, it's just the ashes of Pol Pot here? They piled up his possessions, put his body on the funeral pyre and burnt the lot. Hardly a state funeral.
It's kind of an ignominious ending for one of the great butchers of history. Between 1 and 2 million people, controlled all of Cambodia at one time. This is Pol Pot's monument for posterity. Not too impressive, but probably fitting.
Yeah, very much, very much. Millions of deaths, endless suffering, and all that's left is a dirty mound and a broken toilet in a jungle clearing. Even so, the soldiers still speak in hushed tones at his graveside. The memory of Pol Pot and the killing fields still has a profound effect on the Cambodian people. As they pick over what remains of his funeral pyre, I notice incense sticks, Buddhist offerings on the grave of a communist who despised religion. A day's drive from Pol Pot's grave is the reason Hunter Weiler and Sun Hien have come to this remote part of the jungle. They're meeting up with some former Khmer Rouge soldiers who've become professional wildlife trackers. And they're on the trail of the Keating Boar, Cambodia's semi-legendary two-horned unicorn. These guys are some of the most skillful wildlife hunters in Cambodia. Today, they're working for the Wildlife Conservation Society, an organisation that's changing the way locals view the jungle and the animals in it.
We recruited the best of the former hunters and turned them into wildlife rangers. And the people we've recruited, I would say probably 80% of the tigers are killed by 25% of the hunters. There's a sort of elite that specializes in large mammals. And these are the people we've gone after. So we've taken out of circulation in this province 10 of the very best hunters. And each of those hunters is capable of killing several tiger a year. So that's a dramatic impact to take that many experienced hunters out of circulation and get them on the side of conservation.
Yeah. So here, the stories come together. Khmer Rouge and endangered wildlife. And together, the possibility of a bright future for this beleaguered land.
So have they had much luck recently?
For their efforts, the cameras are beginning to reveal what lies beneath the canopy.
And from this province, we have tiger, gaur and banting, 2 endangered wild cattle, stembar deer, barking deer, and giant ibis bird.
And any sign of Keating Boar?
Not yet. We're hoping.
Yeah.
As we walk back, we stick strictly to the path. Thanks to the Khmer Rouge, Cambodia is one of the most heavily landmined countries on Earth. 6 million of them are still scattered across the country. One false step and you can lose your leg, or worse. Every day somewhere in Cambodia, a landmine explodes under someone. Every single person who lives in this village has either stood on a mine or is related to a victim. They're all here because of this remarkable man, Bud Gibbons. He's a Vietnam vet who decided to return to Indochina to try and help those maimed by landmines. He couldn't do much about the landmines, but he could try and help the victims put their lives back together afterwards. So he started a factory to make low-cost artificial limbs.
It's time to pay back, you know. It's time to pay back for what I did and what we were part of in the past, and also to share some of the incredible wealth and the incredible knowledge that we as Americans have.
Everyone working here is missing a limb or has been severely maimed. But Bud soon realized that providing the limbs wasn't enough. In Cambodia, such victims are usually shunned as unemployable, unmarriageable, and generally a burden on society. If his scheme was to work, he had to do more.
Learning how to use the limb is no problem. 1-2 weeks, we do give them training, how to walk, how to balance, that kind of thing. Then they go back to their village. That is where I think the problem is, because they can't find a way to support themselves financially or economically. They are now supporting themselves mechanically with this limb, but they have no job. So they need to have some way to get money.
So Bud and his landmine victims started a silk industry. And it's good silk, commanding high prices. And it's all made by the maimed and the limbless. They grow their own mulberries to feed to their own silkworms. Then they spin it, dye it, weave it, and market it to the world on the internet. What it's done is give them back their self-respect. With the money they earned, they bought land and they've built homes. Many have married and now educate their children in the school they built themselves. And now they even pass on their skills to those that have limbs. And much of it is due to the drive and enterprise of a former GI. In such an impoverished society, it's amazing what hope and support can achieve, especially when they've been dealt such a cruel blow by war. I leave the village feeling both uplifted and humbled. But we must move on. The Mekong River is home to pirates. Since the end of the war, attacks on boats have increased steadily. Tomorrow, we run the gauntlet of these modern-day buccaneers on one of the most dangerous sections of the river. The Mekong is 2,700 miles long. That's 4,300 kilometres, which makes it one of the longest rivers in the world. From here, it's a 200-mile journey to Phnom Penh, a journey the government advises all Westerners against because of banditry and piracy. Wildlife protection officers Hunter and Sun Hien have made the journey many times though. The jungles that line the banks are a rich source of wildlife for the poachers that they're trying to wipe out. At first, the river appears as a vast drifting lake, but it's not as serene as it seems. This river is a navigator's nightmare. The crew place a bowl of fruit on the bow, an offering to the river spirits to ensure that the passage goes well.
So these rapids all down the Mekong, are they?
Yeah, they have several of them,
Yeah.
on the way from Tung Tran to Purchase. I think that is one of the smaller one, not the biggest one.
Soon the waters start to ripple, then simmer, and whirlpools, rips and currents erupt. Right about now, I'm glad that these are the small rapids. Stone buoys, put in place by the French a century ago, mark the course. The helmsman must apply just the right amount of power on the rudder, or the boat will be ripped apart by the rocks below. For a moment, even the captain casts a concerned eye, but just for a moment. He has total faith in his helmsman, his son, and I guess so should I. Rapids and shallows make travel on the Mekong dangerous after dark, not for getting pirates. So we look for somewhere to rest up for the night. Sailing on this river is very much a family affair. Living aboard is the captain's wife, his mother-in-law, his sons, their wives, and a new member of the crew, his grandson. No doubt he too will one day captain on the Mekong.
Ah, thank you. Being force-fed. This is delicious. Sort of a peanut, peanut and meat and totally. And this is like a sweet rice. They just bundle it up together with banana leaves. Keeps it lovely and fresh. Really good, isn't it? Eat like a king on the Mekong.
Mekong river water isn't quite the purest on earth, but after a hot day, it's got to be the most refreshing. And as the sound of singing reaches out to us across these waters, again I wonder how such a peaceful country could have suffered so much. As day breaks, fishermen are returning from a night's work, and the river glows rich and golden as we slip our moorings and prepare to continue our voyage. And for me, no chance of a sleep-in. The revving engine soon sees to that.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the best night's sleep I've ever had. A lot of muzzies and really sticky. But now it's beautifully cool. I have to say it's an incredibly peaceful place. You know, in the Mekong you expect this incredibly crowded river seething with humanity, but there's nothing. It's just jungle and really beautiful.
However, this wilderness has remained not because of a desire for preservation. It's remained simply because civil unrest meant that no one could safely live here. A no man's land of opportunity for pirates, bandits and renegade units of the Khmer Rouge.
We said when they stop the boat, they shot the gun, and then when we get in, they get all the people up to the jungle, and then those people come into the boat and they check and see everything they want, they took away.
He tells me that a few shots over the bow from the jungle would announce the attackers. It happened so often that once he had to cover his boat with armour plating. Our conversation ends as we approach river shallows. They check the depths, but again, no one's really that concerned. They've all been this way many times before. But then the wilderness disappears, and on the banks, another brand of piracy. Illegal loggers, felling the great forests in a desperate attempt to earn dollars in a cash-strapped country. But spending the inheritance is what happens when order breaks down and a country is pulled apart by war, greed, and opportunism. And when war came to Phnom Penh, it wasn't just a city devastated by bombs. It was an empty city.